About a week later, Ann Qiao Hao saw the latest news in the entertainment industry regarding Lu Jin Nian, who was filming a movie. She then learned that he was filming in Rome. The gloomy days continued to pass, and before she knew it, half a month had gone by, reaching the end of April. Ann Qiao Hao had been in the entertainment industry for more than half a year, but had gained no recognition. Although she had gotten a role until the end of time thanks to Lu Jin Nian, the film was still in post-production and had not yet been released. Even when the promotional materials were released, they were only for the more famous actors in the film. This meant Ann Qiao Hao remained unknown, with no one approaching her for auditions and no advertisements inviting her to represent their products, leaving her with a lot of free time every day. However, Zhao Man, as a responsible agent, continuously helped her find opportunities for auditions for new movies. The entertainment industry had always been complicated, and often it's not just about being beautiful or having good acting skills to land a role. As a result, in the past month and a half, Ann Qiao Hao had failed 8 auditions, each time ending in disappointment. Today was the 9th time she had auditioned, and as expected, it ended just like the previous 8 times, without success. Qiao, it's been nearly a month. Not to mention getting a decent role, not even a servant's role where you can just show your face. If this goes on, we'll starve to death. In contrast to Zhao Ming's anxiousness, Ann Qiao Hao appeared calm and composed. Sitting in the passenger seat, she casually browsed through her phone and replied in a steady tone, "Wasn't it like this before?" As Ann Qiao Hao said this, she happened to notice that Lu Jin Nian's name was at the top of the trending topics on Sina Weibo. She paused mid-sentence, then, after a brief silence, continued as though nothing had happened. "And besides, if I starve, I won't let you starve with me." "I know you won't let me starve," Zhao Ming responded, eyeing Ann Qiao Hao through the rearview mirror. Then she noticed the name Lu Jin Nian on Ann Qiao Hao's phone screen. After a moment, she said, Qiao, why don't you ask Lu Jin Nian for a role? While you can still get something from him, you might as well take advantage of it. After all, that man doesn't treat you well, so why not use him? And honestly, his money has nothing to do with you. Your parents passed away early and you were raised by your uncle. Do you want to go back to living with him after your relationship with him is over?
Zhao Meng wasn't wrong. Although her thoughts were somewhat practical, she genuinely cared about Ann Qiao Hao. Ann Qiao Hao knew that Zhao Meng didn't mean any harm, she just wanted to help her rise in the entertainment industry. Ann Qiao Hao knew that the only way to get back on her feet was by relying on Lu Jin Nian's influence. If she ever had to part ways with him in the future, at least she could live a comfortable life. Women often make plans for themselves, and there was nothing wrong with that. It wasn't that she looked down on this kind of transaction, but it was that Lu Jin Nian hated her. Even sleeping with her disgusted him. Ann Qiao Hao lowered her lashes, hiding the sadness in her eyes, then forced a smile. "He's filming in Rome. You knew that, didn't you? I can't exactly go to Rome and sleep with him." Zhao Meng seemed surprised by her response. Ann Qiao Hao furrowed her brows, asking, "What's wrong?" Qiao, you don't know?" "Know what?" After a long pause, Zhao Meng finally spoke. "Lu Jin Nian left Rome 2 days ago. Hasn't he come back yet?" He had returned, but she, as his wife, hadn't known it. Ann Qiao Hao froze for a moment, then, as if it had nothing to do with her, she casually smiled and said, "He doesn't usually come Rome. I've set a personal record of more than 3 months without hearing from him, but now it's just over half a month." Zhao Meng didn't say anything else. The car fell silent for a while, and after a long pause, Zhao Meng couldn't help but speak again. Qiao, 2 days ago, I heard from someone that he had come back. They seem to have heard it from the leadership at Huangyan Media. The day he returned from Rome, he went to the company for a meeting. Halfway through, he suddenly collapsed and had to be rushed to the hospital. Ann Qiao Hao was silent for a moment after hearing the news before responding softly with an "ah." "I also heard the leadership say that Lu Jin Nian was acting strange. His fever was as high as 40 degrees Celsius, and when they took him to the hospital, he refused to let the doctors examine him. He insisted on being discharged, and despite everyone's efforts to persuade him, he insisted on leaving. Eventually, he just drove off on his own with a high fever. Lu Jin Nian really has a lot of bad habits. Even when he's burning up, he won't let the doctor check him. Do you think he could have burned himself out from that high fever? Ann Qiao Hao kept her calm demeanor, but her hands, hidden from Zhao Man, clenched the hem of her shirt tightly. Zhao Man stared ahead at the road while driving, and after a long silence, asked another question. Qiao, aren't you going to see him? Ann Qiao Hao remained silent for a moment, then shook her head. I told him I wouldn't interfere with his life. This time, Zhao Man was the one who softly muttered, and the two of them fell into silence once again.
20. Despite Ann Qiao Hao pretending not to care about Lu Jin Nian in front of Zhao Meng still drove her back to Kui-Tu Yuan. Ann Qiao Hao hesitated for a moment, then eventually opened the garage, took her car, and left the house. Ann Qiao Hao had heard from Hua Jiamo that Lu Jin Nian had a private villa in the northern suburbs of the city, located on a mountainside. She also learned from Hua Jiamo that the place Lu Jin Nian hated the most was the hospital. Whenever he fell ill, he would always want to escape to that secluded villa to hide by himself. In fact, Hua Jiamo had casually revealed this when he mentioned Lu Jin Nian refusing to go to the hospital. And that was when Ann Qiao Hao had quietly taken note of it. Although Ann Qiao Hao wasn't sure if Lu Jin Nian was actually at the villa, she still held on to a small hope and decided to try her luck by going there. Before leaving, Ann Qiao Hao made a special stop at the pharmacy. She didn't know exactly what illness Lu Jin Nian had, so to be safe, she only bought some fever-reducing medicine. Ann Qiao Hao had never been to the villa before, but she vaguely remembered Hua Jiamo saying that Lu Jin Nian's villa was located on the highest peak of a mountain called Yi Mountain. Therefore, Ann Qiao Hao searched for directions to Yi Mountain and soon discovered that it was indeed in the northern part of Beijing. She then started her car and set off. Luckily, Yi Mountain wasn't very large, and it only had a small villa area. Ann Qiao Hao drove straight to the highest point, where she saw a solitary villa. She guessed it was Lu Jin Nian's villa. She set off at 3 p.m., and by the time she reached Yi Mountain, it was already past 5 p.m. The sun had set, and the golden-red sunlight shone on the villa, making it appear as if it were a majestic castle, beautiful and brilliant. The villa's gate was tightly shut, and Ann Qiao Hao parked her car directly in front of it. She looked around and saw a low fence on one side. Without hesitation, she climbed over it. She didn't have the key to the villa, so she knocked on the door, but no one answered. Looking through the floor-to-ceiling windows into the large villa, she saw no sign of Lu Jin Nian. Ann Qiao Hao walked around the villa and finally found a half-open, floor-to-ceiling window at the back. After some hesitation, she walked over and gently pushed the door open. Inside, the villa was luxuriously decorated. Ann Qiao Hao first walked around the ground floor, but seeing no sign of Lu Jin Nian, she climbed up to the second floor. The entire villa was very quiet, with only the sound of her footsteps. She checked each room and finally, in the large bedroom at the end of the second floor, she found Lu Jin Nian. He was lying on the bed in a suit, eyes closed, peacefully resting. Ann Qiao Hao raised her hand and knocked on the door. When there was no response from the man on the bed, she quickly entered.
The man, still wearing his suit, lay quietly on the bed with his eyes closed. From a distance, it looked like he was deeply asleep. Ann Qiao Hao raised her hand to knock on the door, but when she saw no response from the man on the bed, she furrowed her brows and quickly entered. As she approached, Ann Qiao Hao clearly saw Lu Jin Nian lying casually on the bed. Her body trembled slightly, and she instinctively reached out to touch his forehead to check his temperature, only to find it burning with fever. Despite her entering the room and touching him, he didn't respond at all, clearly too feverish to be conscious. Ann Qiao Hao quickly took out the fever-reducing medication she had bought, following the dosage instructions. She grabbed a bottle of water from the nightstand and opened it. Then, she struggled to lift Lu Jin Nian's body, placing the pill into his mouth and trying to pour water into him. Lu Jin Nian, who was completely out of it from the high fever, couldn't drink on his own. Ann Qiao Hao lifted the water bottle and poured a little into his mouth, but he even spat out both the water and the medicine. She repeated the process of trying to feed him the medicine twice, but to no avail. His body temperature kept rising, and even the air around him felt uncomfortably hot. Worry surged in Ann Qiao Hao's heart. He was in no condition to take the medicine, and in this remote forest villa, it would take hours to reach the nearest hospital. As she was thinking this, Ann Qiao Hao suddenly remembered how, when she was little and had a high fever, her mother had used an ice bag to cool her down. With this memory, she placed the medicine and water on the nightstand and hurried out of the bedroom. She went down to the kitchen and opened the fridge to find some ice to help cool Lu Jin Nian down, but the fridge only had some cold bottled water. After thinking for a moment, Ann Qiao Hao grabbed a bottle of cold water and returned upstairs. She wet a towel with the water, wrung it out, and then placed it on Lu Jin Nian's forehead. Afterward, she carefully removed his suit, unbuttoned his shirt, and used the cold, damp cloth to wipe his burning body, helping him cool down. The cold towel brought Lu Jin Nian some relief from his high fever. His furrowed brows slowly relaxed with each wipe from Ann Qiao Hao, and his body, which had been shaking earlier, gradually calmed, and his breathing, which had been labored due to the fever, became quieter as he fell into a deep sleep. Ann Qiao Hao watched as Lu Jin Nian stopped shaking and relaxed. Only then did she let out a quiet sigh of relief. She carefully tucked him under the covers and squatted down beside the bed, keeping watch over him. Her gaze couldn't help but fall upon his face. His lips were unusually pale, still furrowed, and his face appeared exhausted. Even in his sickly state, he was still incredibly handsome.
Qiao Hao put on to stare at him in the daze. By the time she came to her senses, it was already dark outside. The villain on the hillside had grown quiet, and the silence was even more pronounced now, with the faint sounds of insects chirping and birds singing in the forests surrounding the villa. The bedroom was still dark, with no lights on. Qiao Hao took out her phone, using the screen's light to turn on the lamp. Then she reached out and touched Lu Jin Nian's forehead, finding that his fever had lowered, although he was still quite hot. So she changed the cold towel on his forehead once more. Qiao Hao stayed awake to watch over Lu Jin Nian, changing his towel every so often. By 11 p.m., his temperature had returned to a more manageable level. Only then did Qiao Hao relax and sit on the floor beside the bed, unable to stop herself from falling asleep. Because of her uncomfortable position, Qiao Hao only managed to nap for a while before waking up again. She instinctively reached out to feel Lu Jin Nian's forehead and found that his temperature had risen again. Panicking, Qiao Hao quickly grabbed a towel and began wiping him down to lower his fever, but it had no effect. His temperature continued to rise. Eventually, in his delirious state, he let out a soft groan from discomfort. The cold towel only provided temporary relief. To truly bring the fever down, medication was necessary. It was late at night in the remote mountains, and Qiao Hao feared that Lu Jin Nian's fever might worsen, becoming serious. Yet this unconscious man was unable to take any medicine. Qiao Hao stared at Lu Jin Nian for a long moment before making up her mind. She stood up, took the medicine from the bedside table, and placed it in Lu Jin Nian's mouth. Afterwards, she took a sip of water herself and slowly leaned down toward his lips. As she leaned down, his face came closer to hers. She could feel his breath, and her body tensed. She placed her hands on either side of his head, gripping the bed tightly. Then, with trembling lips, she pressed them against his.
Qiao Hao took a long time to recover from the shock when her lips met Lu Jin Nian's. It seemed that the fever medicine had started to work, and that's why Lu Jin Nian could finally sleep peacefully. Qiao Hao covered Lu Jin Nian with the blanket and glanced at the fever medication instructions. It clearly stated that if the fever did not subside after 4 hours, the medicine could be taken again. 4 hours later, it would be 3 in the morning. Qiao Hao thought about setting an alarm on her phone, but she was afraid of waking Lu Jin Nian.
so she decided to force herself to stay awake. During that time, Qiao Hao continuously checked Lu Jin's forehead, and his temperature gradually decreased. It was finally manageable by 3 a.m. compared to the burning heat before. His fever had reduced to a level that could be considered slightly high. Still, Qiao Hao was worried that Lu Jin might get a fever again after he woke up. So, for safety, she decided to repeat the previous method and mouth-to-mouth administer the medicine to Lu Jin. Last time, after giving him the medicine, Qiao Hao quickly pulled away. But this time, she lingered a little longer on Lu Jin's lips, hesitating for a moment. That moment only lasted a few seconds, but when Qiao Hao tried to pull away, she was suddenly grabbed by her head and pushed back down. Before she could react, her lips met Lu Jin's again. The fever had made Lu Jin's consciousness hazy. He vaguely felt someone taking care of him, but it seemed like a dream. In his delirium, he felt something pushed into his mouth, bitter and sharp, and as he was about to spit it out, a soft, warm pair of lips stopped him. He remembered this sensation. The tingling feeling quickly spread throughout his body, and his body began to burn again. But this time, it wasn't the high fever. It was a fierce, intense flame starting to burn inside him. He desperately tried to extinguish the fire, but his fever had dulled his self-control. In the end, he instinctively kissed the lips that were pressing against his. Qiao Hao was so frightened that her body stiffened and her mind went blank. It wasn't until she regained her senses that Lu Jin's burning tongue had somehow slipped into her mouth, entwining with hers, pushing and pulling for the sweetness. If this was called kissing, she remembered it as the kiss from 3 months ago. She had initiated it, though she was drunk then. No matter how brave she felt, it was beyond her capability. She only pressed her lips to his and didn't know what to do next. Though Lu Jin was burning with fever and thought it was a hallucination or a dream, his body instinctively responded more strongly. The kiss deepened and his hand began tearing at her clothes.
Lu Jin Nian was in a daze, and for half a day he still couldn't take off Qiao An Hao's clothes. Frustrated, he directly used force to tear her clothes off. The sound of fabric rip rang out. Qiao An Hao's mind was now completely clear. She finally realized what she and Lu Jin Nian were doing right now. She subconsciously tilted her head to the side to look at Lu Jin Nian's face and saw the man's dazed expression, obviously thinking that he was in a beautiful dream. Qiao An Hao suddenly remembered the time 3 months ago when he was also in a state of unconsciousness, and then the two of them had sex. Until he woke up, he was so angry that he wanted to strangle her. Qiao An Hao's whole body was cold. She instinctively reached out, struggling to push Lu Jin Nian away. Lu Jin Nian frowned, reached out to grab her 2 hands, used his heavy body to press her down, and then continued his movements. Lu Jin Nian's lips slowly moved from her neck to her sweet, plump lips. Qiao An Hao only felt as if she was being electrocuted, following his conductive lips throughout her weak heart. She tried her best to push, but had no strength at all. Qiao An Hao suppressed the trembling in her heart. Her hands clenched into fists, forcing herself to ignore the emotions Lu Jin Nian created, using all her strength to escape from him. However, no matter how strong her strength was, men were still stronger than women. He easily subdued her, then without saying a word, pressed her down and took her. When he entered that territory, Qiao An Hao instantly became like a deflated balloon, no longer having the strength to struggle. Her heart instantly sank to the bottom. He clearly despised sleeping with her, but now he was so stupid that he would touch her. Wait until he woke up and found out that he had once again made the same mistake with her. Thinking of this, Qiao An Hao didn't dare to imagine any more. She just bit her lip
and let him do whatever he wanted. Satisfied with his desire, after the overexertion of the activity, Lu Jin Nian hugged Zhao Man in his arms, continuing to fall into a deep sleep. Zhao Man was ravaged by Lu Jin Nian. Her whole body was limp and powerless, exhausted, but she didn't have the slightest bit of sleepiness. When she came to her senses, her first thought was to leave his arms. Although Lu Jin Nian's embrace made her linger, it made her want to stay a little longer. But she knew that this hug didn't belong to her. It was just a mistake he made while delirious. When Zhao Man raised her hand to grab Lu Jin Nian's arm that was on her waist, her eyes suddenly swept over the phone. She hesitated for a moment, reached out to grab her phone, opened the camera, and took a photo of the two of them. In the photo, he was hugging her and sleeping very peacefully. Even though him hugging her was just an unintentional mistake, she still wanted to save this moment. That way, when she was alone, she could take out this photo, look at it alone, and then deceive herself that he was truly hugging her and falling asleep together.